Hare Krishna. Welcome to the weekly Chaitanya Charitamrita class at Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji Dham. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtotra Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, we are continuing with our reading of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is Madhya Leela, chapter 9, titled Lord Chaitanya's Travels to the Holy Places. And we are going to continue with text 49. We were in the middle of the purport. And we'll continue with the 9 principles of Buddhist philosophy today. Okay. If you have your phones, you can go to vedabase.io, and this is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 9, text 49. So please repeat. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. This is text 49. Tarka Pradhana Bauddha Shastra Nava Mate Tarke Kandila Prabhu Napare Stapite Tarka Pradhana Bauddha Shastra Nava Mate Tarke Kandila Prabhu Napare Stapite Tarka Pradhana Bauddha Shastra Nava Mate Tarke Kandila Prabhu Napare Stapite. Please chant. Tarka Pradhana Bauddha Shastra Nava Mate Tarke Kandila Prabhu Napare Stapite. Tarka Pradhana Bauddha Shastra Nava Mate Tarke प्रभु न परे स्थापिते. तर्क प्रधान बौद्ध शास्त्र नवमते. तर्के कांडिला प्रभु न परे स्थापिते. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is the word for word. Tarka pradhana, argumentative. Bauddha Shastra, scriptures of the Buddhist cult. Navamate, in 9 basic principles. Tarke, by argument. Khandila, refuted. Prabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Na, not. Pare, can. Sthapite, establish. Translation. The scriptures of the Buddhist cult are chiefly based on argument and logic, and they contain 9 chief principles. Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defeated them in their argument, they could not establish their cult. So, we started off this verse. I'll just read the first paragraph and then move on to where we left off from last week. So, Mahaprabhu is on his tour of South India, and then from, I think, Vriddha Kanchi, that was the previous place, he started moving south, and he met so many different kinds of philosophers. And he made everybody devotees, it said. But specifically at this point, he is meeting these Buddhist philosophers. There is this Buddhist spiritual master along with many of his disciples, and he's going to talk to them. Actually, in this verse, he's talking to them, and he's basically defeated all of their arguments to establish Vaishnavism. And the Buddhist argument or the philosophy is based on 9 tenets. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes. So we'll read those 9 tenets, and we spoke of the first tenet, Prabhupada's purport, we read last time, and then we'll finish off, hopefully, this rest of it today. So purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states that according to the Buddhist cult, there are 2 ways of understanding philosophy. One is called Hinayana and the other is Mahayana. Along this path, there are 9 principles. Irrespective of whether you are Hinayana or Mahayana, these 9 principles apply. First one, the creation is eternal. Therefore, there is no need to accept a creator. This cosmic manifestation is false. Third, I am the truth. I am is the truth. Fourth, there is repetition of birth and death. Fifth, Lord Buddha is the only source of understanding the truth. Sixth, the principle of nirvana or annihilation is the ultimate goal. 7. The philosophy of Buddha is the only philosophical path. 8. The Vedas are compiled by human beings. 9. Pious activities showing mercy to others and so on are advised. So these are basically the 9 pillars on which the Buddhist philosophy rests. And Mahaprabhu is now giving arguments. Actually, Prabhupada in the purport is giving arguments for each one of those tenets. And the first one was creation is eternal. So this manifestation, this material world is, they're saying, doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. That's basically what eternal means, right? And the last week, we basically saw why that's not the case. Does anybody remember why it cannot be the case? Stunned silence. The first tenet of the Buddhist philosophy is creation is eternal. Right? This is their first philosophy. And then last week we read the purport that basically defeated this argument that creation is eternal. So is creation eternal in the first place? We agree with it or not? Yeah, obviously. Why no? Yeah, it has a beginning and an end. So something that has a beginning and an end cannot really be eternal in nature. This was the argument that Prabhupada was putting forward. And also, one of the main arguments of the Buddhist philosophy is annihilation. Everything is at shunyavad, annihilated at the end. If creation is eternal, how can it be annihilated? Right? This is a very big problem with this philosophy. And also in our practical experience, we have never seen matter being eternal. It's always created. So therefore, what is eternal is not the creation itself, but the creator. Because when it is being created, somebody has to create. Right? Like when it has a beginning, it means it's being created. So therefore, the actual understanding is that the cosmic manifestation is not eternal, but the creator is eternal. So like that. We saw several arguments last week on why the material creation is not eternal. That is a very wrong principle. So the second argument that the Buddhists have, we'll continue from there, is the cosmic manifestation is false. It's actually, when you read both of them together, right, it's pretty mind-boggling. It absolutely doesn't make sense. You on one hand say the creation is eternal and there is no requirement for a creator, and then you say it's false. Like everything here is false. You are false, I am false, this body is false, this table is false, everything is false, is their argument. So we'll read Prabhupada's purport. It starts with the Buddhists argue that the world is false. If you want, you can pick that up. So this is after the verse that he quotes from the BG. It's the second paragraph after that. So this is Prabhupada's purport. The Buddhists argue that the world is false, but this is not valid. The world is temporary, but is not false. As long as we have the body, we must suffer the pleasures and pains of the body, even though we are not the body. We may not have these pleasures and pains very seriously, but they are factual nonetheless. We cannot actually say that they are false. If the bodily pains and pleasures are false, the creation would be false also. And consequently, no one would take very much interest in it. The conclusion is that the material creation is not false or imaginary, but it is temporary. So this is our understanding of creation itself, is that the material creation is that we don't agree that it is false, but it is temporary. It has a beginning and it has an end. It manifests and unmanifests, manifests and unmanifests like that. So in that way it is temporary. It stays for a specific time and then it's gone. But Prabhupada is giving this argument just for argument's sake. If we consider that the creation is false, then what is the problem that Prabhupada is saying in the purport? He's basically giving one specific example. We can take many examples, but this is a very potent example that Prabhupada is giving on why it's not a very tenable solution. Does anybody remember from what we read from the purport? Yeah, pain and pleasure, right? So we have this body, and the argument is it's false, right? So the body has pain and pleasure. Let's take pain for example. Pleasure we'll all fine, but pain. If the pain is false, then why do we give so much importance to it, right? If we have a toothache, it's not really a toothache. It's just false. It's just a concoction. It's all imaginary. Then why do we have dentists? Why do we take the world seriously at all? Is the question. If everything in this world is false, why do we take it seriously? Right? This is this is the problem with the Buddhist philosophy, is that they say the world is false, but then take the world very seriously. So if the world is false, it's actually a very schizophrenic idea, if you think about it. So all of you are actually not there. I'm imagining you. Right? You're all false. I myself am imagining myself speak. This body is not there. Nothing is there in this world. But it's all a projection of my mind. Right? It's all a very false thing. But I'm thinking everything is there. Can you live in such a state? For us, it's very clear. Everything is present. But it's not present forever in this material world. We've all seen. Matter starts, once it's created, obviously has to dwindle and go away. This is the nature of the material world. But the problem they get into, why they say this, is because they cannot agree that there is a soul. This is the problem. This is why they say the material creation is false. This is why the Buddhists and even the Mayavadis, the Shankarites, will say this world is false. No. Everything is annihilated, right? This is their philosophy. Shunyavad. At the end of it, everything is gone. They don't have a very proper explanation for anything at all, which we will see. So this is the point that they're trying to get away from, right? If you have something called a soul, then they don't have any other. We will see that for the Buddhists, everything is zero. Like everything annihilates, Shunyavad. And for Mayavadis, they add one extra. It's one. So it's Nirvisesha and Shunyavad. And Nirvisesha means this one entity has no qualities whatsoever, no Vishesha. So from that perspective, everything, if you consider everything to be one eternal reality, and this eternal reality is considered Brahman, then if you say you have a soul, or if this manifestation is real, it means the Brahman is trapped inside a body, which is absolutely untenable in any philosophical sense. So therefore, to circumvent that, they say everything is false. And this is like you have a cold, and then you cut off your head and you get rid of the cold. This is the direction in which the argument goes. So therefore, if you consider everything is false, then what is the meaning for anything in this world? Right? So our Vaishnava understanding is that things are not false, but it is temporary. In that way, it's an illusion. Right? We also consider this to be an illusion, but the illusion is that we consider something temporary to be eternal. That is our illusion. We consider this body to be ourselves, but that is not what our real identity is, right? This body comes and goes. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara. So like that, we transition from boyhood to youth to old age, and then we get another body, but we think we are this body and act in those ways. Therefore, that is the illusion that we are talking about. Not that this body itself is false. That is not the illusion. Then that will be a very difficult world to live in. Okay. So that's the second argument about how this entire world is false. Okay. And then the third principle, the Buddhist principle, is that the Buddhists maintain that the principle I am is the ultimate truth. But this excludes the individuality of I and you. If there is no I and you or individuality, there is no possibility of argument. The Buddhist philosophy depends on argument. But there can be no argument if one simply depends on I am. There must be a you or another person also. The philosophy of duality. The existence of the individual soul and the supersoul must be there. This is confirmed in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord says, Natve vaham jatunasham natvam neme janadipa nachaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayamata param. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. We existed in the past in different bodies, and after the annihilation of this body, we shall exist in another body. The principle of the soul is eternal, and it exists in this body or in another body. Even in this lifetime, we experience existence in a child's body, a youth's body, a man's body, and an old body. After the annihilation of the body, we acquire another body. The Buddhist cult also accepts the philosophy of transmigration, but the Buddhists do not properly explain the next birth. There are 8,400,000 species of life, and our next birth may be in any one of them. Therefore, this human body is not guaranteed. Actually, Prabhupada here is combining the third and fourth principles of the Buddhist philosophy. The third one is I am is the truth, and fourth, there is repetition of birth and death. They do agree that there is repetition of birth and death, but we'll see how it's not really properly explained. So the first thing that the Buddhists say is I am. There is one, right? There is no two. There is I am, in the sense there is just one entity that's there, and everything else is false. Everything else is just a concoction. And then the problem with that, Prabhupada says, is your entire philosophy, the Buddhist philosophy, is based on argument, right? Who will you argue with if there is only one person? The entire philosophy says there is only I am. So for you to argue, there has to be a I and a you. Right? There has to be two people for any argument to take place. But when you say there is only I am, who are you arguing with? This is one problem. And the other problem is, if everybody is the same, everybody is I am, then if I eat, you should be satisfied. Right? Then if I am happy, you should be happy. Because there is no difference. All of us are the same. All of us are I am. But we clearly see that's not the case. In fact, in this world, if somebody else is happy, the other person is sad that the other person is happy. It's the opposite of what should happen if this holds true. So therefore, we cannot really accept this principle that everything is just one. And this is the problem also with the Mayavad philosophy, is that if everything is one, who is an illusion? Right? This is the philosophy of the Mayavadis. It is the famous philosophy of the rope and the snake. So you know this. This is how Adi Shankaracharya explains the Mayavad philosophy. So it's pitch dark on an Amavasya night. And then you go outside the door and then you see a snake. And then you're really terrified about the snake. You run into the house and shut the door. And then the next morning, when the sun comes out, you open the door again. You actually see outside, and then it was not really a snake, but it was a rope. You thought it was the snake the last night. But then in the morning when you come and see, it's the rope. So this is the analogy that he gives. And the analogy here is that we are all in illusion, which is like the dark night, right? And then when we have knowledge, or when this ignorance is destroyed through knowledge, which is the morning, when we have light, we see that everything is actually an illusion, and I am not actually the snake, but it's actually the rope. It's not actually the snake, but it's actually the rope. Which means we think we are these bodies, this is this world and all of that, but when we have knowledge, we will know that we are Brahman, this one entity. Because with the Mayavad philosophy, it's called Advaita. There is no two, there is only one. The entire manifestation is just one entity called Brahman, and this Brahman has no attributes, no qualities whatsoever. It's just this one entity. And this one entity, we will know that we are this one entity, that we are God, once we have this knowledge. So this is the example that Adi Shankaracharya gives with the rope and the snake. Right now we are in the state of illusion, in avidya, and when we actually have knowledge, we will know that we are not these bodies or whatever, we are not this world is false, but we are Brahman. All of us are Brahman, but we just don't know it yet because we don't have knowledge. Are you all convinced? Yes. You should have questions because this has a lot of fallacies. Yeah. 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 This is the problem. Exactly. Who is taking birth? This is all a very problematic solution, right? If you say, no, there is no proper explanation. That's the problem with the Buddhist philosophy. That's why it dwindled, right? That's why Adi Shankaracharya was able to defeat that philosophy. Actually, the whole of India, it said, became Buddhist. Because people were fed up with the Brahmins, right? This is why Lord Buddha came in the first place. That they were using animal sacrifice to eat meat, and they were rampantly killing animals. And Lord Buddha came and said, if this is what the Vedas tell you, I'm rejecting the Vedas. And of course, Buddha was an incarnation of the Lord, and he could attract the atheists, and he attracted so many people. And that way, Buddhism became pretty... And because they rejected the Vedas, they started becoming violent themselves. We will see, which is one of the problems also in their Buddhist philosophy on why. That's why, at least when Shankaracharya came, he came and established the supremacy of the Vedas. Although his philosophy might be a little off, a lot off, he at least came back and re-established the supremacy of the Vedas, which was a very important thing that he did. And then he said, this is what the principles, the essence of Vedas is, to which we have arguments. But the Buddhists completely rejected the Vedas themselves. So then that's one problem. Yeah. Yeah. Because they've rejected the Vedas, they have to give some other philosophical explanation to everything that's happening, right? Why is there pain? Why is there birth and death? So many things are there, right? So they have to give some concocted explanation. And this is what all systems of philosophy do, in the sense of, we read few verses back, there are 6 prominent kinds of philosophy, right? We have the Kapila's philosophy of Sankhya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Yoga. What was the other one that I'm forgetting? There is Vedanta and there is one more. No. They are based on the Vedanta philosophy. So among all of this, only Vedanta philosophy accepts there is a supreme entity. There is everything, every other philosophy doesn't agree, doesn't have the notion of a creator or a supreme being. So this is why Vedanta philosophy is topmost, because it's based on the Vedas. Vedanta means it's the anta or the essence of the Vedas. So anyway, coming back to the rope and the snake philosophy example, what has to be true for you to actually confuse a rope with a snake? Snake has to exist, the rope has to exist. So 2 things have to exist, which itself is problematic in the in the philosophy, because there is no 2 in the Advaita philosophy, right? What else has to be true for us to confuse a rope with a snake? No, there is something even more fundamental for us to confuse. Say you've seen, right? Assume that there is darkness and light, and there is light, and now you've seen it's not a rope, it's a snake. For you to confuse the rope with a snake, what else has to be true? That's what we said, right? That they have to exist. Both of them have to be there. Can you confuse a rope with an apple? Yeah. 2 things have to be similar for you to actually get confused between the 2, right? You will not get confused between a rope and an apple. They're completely 2 different things. So when, at least in the Advaita philosophy, everything is Brahman, and they agree that Brahman is eternal, right? But everything here is the exact opposite of Brahman, the material world. We are confusing the material world with Brahman. That's basically the confusion. Once knowledge is there, we'll know everything is Brahman. But there is no similarity between Brahman and this material world. In fact, everything is the opposite. This is very temporary in nature, whereas Brahman is eternal in nature. So how can we actually confuse Brahman with this material world when there are no similarities at all? Huh? No. There is no similarity with the material world and Brahman. At least from our philosophy, Brahman is Sat Chit and Ananda. The material world is Asat, Achit and Nirananda. But that's not material, right? What we're confusing, the Brahman is this material creation. We're not talking about the soul at all here, because there is no soul. There is only one. There is only Brahman. So if there is soul, then there is 2. Right? There is a super soul and another soul. But the biggest nail in the coffin, there's several arguments actually. Who is an illusion in this entire? Who is an illusion? But who is that I? Huh? Yeah, the Brahman is an illusion in this entire philosophy. Everybody agrees Brahman can never be an illusion. Even Shankaracharya will agree. So this is the biggest problem with this philosophy, is that if there is only one entity, then that one entity is Brahman, and Brahman is an illusion. So which is a very problematic argument. And this is Jiva Goswami. He gives several of these arguments. He takes many of these from Ramanujacharya also, who was the first Acharya to defeat the arguments of Shankaracharya. In his Saptavida Anupapatti, 7 kinds of arguments Ramanujacharya gives on why this is problematic. And then Jiva Goswami, of course, uses this and, of course, gives our own philosophical understanding of why this is a problem. So this is the principle of I am is problematic for all these reasons. And then they say only I am exists, but there is transmigration of the soul. They agree to it, which is their fourth principle, right? There is repetition of, not transmigration of the soul, there is repetition of birth and death. From our principle, it's transmigration of the soul. They agree that there is repetition of birth and death. And according to the Buddhist philosophy, the reason for us to have continuous birth is because we have desires. We have to fulfill those desires, therefore we have to take birth again. And their solution to that is to squish out the desire, have no desire at all. If you don't have any desire, you will not be born again. You will not have to take another birth again. So the problem, there are several problems with this, which is the fourth point that Prabhupada is explaining here. That the body is annihilated, right? At the time of death, the body is annihilated. And ultimately, if you don't have desires, there is complete annihilation, you won't have to be born again. This is where the Buddhists are going for. Because there is desires, you have to be born again and you have to experience pain in this world when you take a birth. Therefore, stop having desires. Therefore, this body will be annihilated at the end of your life. And then you won't have a body again. So you have desires. And because of your desires, you take birth again. Right? But where is this desire stored if the body is annihilated? Yeah, they don't have the concept of soul or the subtle body. Right? For us, we clearly know all our desires are carried in our subtle body to the next body, and based on those desires, we get another body. But in their case, there is only I am. And they don't know what this I am is. It's not a very clear definition of what this I am is. So where are these desires stored? And then how will you vanquish them? This is not very clearly explained. This is why Prabhupada is saying, we know that 8,400,000 species are there, and there are ways in which we can see how you can get those bodies, right? Like if you see the Gita, the picture plate in the beginning, you can see like if you are like really fond of eating meat, and then you get this tiger's body or a lion's body. Like that, those 4 illicit activities are mentioned, and then what kind of bodies we might get. There is a clear idea of what you do to get what, right? But in the Buddhist philosophy, we have no idea how that happens. It's not very clearly explained in the Buddhist philosophy. That's what Prabhupada is saying. The Buddhists do not properly explain the next birth. How? How does this happen? When there is nothing, no container to hold whatever your desires are, how do you create another body? Right? So this is their fourth principle. The fifth principle is, according to the Buddhist fifth principle, Lord Buddha is the only source for attainment of knowledge. We cannot accept this, for Lord Buddha rejected the principles of Vedic knowledge. One must accept a principle of standard knowledge because one cannot attain the absolute truth simply by intellectual speculation. If everyone is an authority, or if everyone accepts his own intelligence as the ultimate creation, as is presently fashionable, the scriptures will be interpreted in many different ways, and everyone will claim his own philosophy supreme. This has become a very great problem, and everyone is interpreting scripture in his own way and setting up his own basis of authority. Yato mat, tato pat. Now everybody and anybody is trying to establish his own theory as the ultimate truth. The Buddhists theorize that annihilation or nirvana is the ultimate goal. Annihilation applies to the body, but the spirit soul transmigrates from one body to another. If this were not the case, how can so many multifarious bodies come into existence? If the next birth is a fact, the next bodily form is also a fact. As soon as we accept a material body, we must accept that the fact that the body will be annihilated, and that we will have to accept another body. If all material bodies are doomed to annihilation, we must obtain a non-material body or a spiritual body, if we wish the next birth to be anything but false. How the spiritual body is attained is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita 4.9. This is the highest perfection by which one can transcend the transmigration of material bodies and return home back to Godhead. It is not that existence becomes void or zero. Existence continues, but if we positively want to annihilate the material body, we have to accept a spiritual body. Otherwise, there can be no eternality for the soul. I think Prabhupada is again combining 5 and 6. The fifth principle is Lord Buddha is the only source of understanding truth, and the sixth is the principle of nirvana or annihilation is the ultimate goal. So the first one, Prabhupada is saying, we cannot accept that Lord Buddha is the only source of understanding the truth. Why? Why can't we accept? Yeah, because he rejected the Vedas, right? And if we don't accept the Vedas, then the opposite starts becoming very prominent, which is the case in the present times that we live in, is that all of us start using our own tiny intelligence and start creating our own philosophies. And Prabhupada is giving this famous quote of Yatomat Tatopat. Yatomat Tatopat means whatever you think is the way. Right? Yatomat, whatever you think, Tatopat, that is the path. That is the way. So that's why we have so many different kinds of philosophies, and none of those philosophies actually are making people happy because it's not based on the absolute truth. And what is the problem with having our own intelligence think of ways? Is our intelligence useless? What does conditioning mean? Yeah, exactly. The intelligence takes use of sense perception, right? The intelligence doesn't act separately. The intelligence, we gain our intelligence through our senses, right? When we come into a certain situation, we use our senses to actually gain knowledge, and then via that knowledge we have gained and through experiences that we have had in life, we use our intelligence to basically think, oh, if this might be the case, that might be the case. And the problem with that, like Mataji was saying, is that our senses are imperfect. So when we start gaining knowledge from imperfect senses, our knowledge also is imperfect. And this is the biggest problem. So when our basic knowledge is imperfect, then our assumption based on that knowledge will also be imperfect. Our deduction based on that knowledge will also be imperfect. Therefore, we cannot end up with anything good. And also, as spirit souls in this material body, this conditioning, we have 4 defects. Does anybody know what those 4 defects are? We have the propensity to cheat. We are in illusion, which is the biggest illusion is we think we are these bodies. Then, one of which we already covered, our senses are imperfect, and then we make mistakes. We have these 4 problems, and these are very difficult problems actually. When you start making mistakes, then what is the guarantee that whatever you're saying is perfect? Mistake means it's imperfect, right? So therefore, we have to get our information from a source that doesn't have any of these problems. That is perfect. That the source doesn't make any mistake. The source doesn't have a propensity to cheat. And the source is not an illusion. And Krishna is such a source, right? Because the Vedas, the first created being was Brahma, right? And Lord Brahma was doing meditation, and then he actually understood the Vedas. And how did he understand the Vedas? From Krishna, from within the heart. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. This Srimad Bhagavatam says that the Vedas are coming directly from Krishna. It is not a matter of creation, even by the first created being. Lord Brahma himself didn't get the Vedas, write the Vedas. It was by Krishna himself. Krishna imparted this knowledge from within the heart of Lord Brahma. So therefore, Krishna or God doesn't have any of these problems that we just stated, and therefore the right way to actually acquire knowledge is from God or the Vedas or the words of God. And those words of God, especially when coming in a disciplic succession, give us perfect knowledge. And whereas the problem with the Buddhists is they say Buddha is the only source, and they reject the Vedas. And what it creates is these multifarious concoctions of philosophies that creates a lot of problems. And what to speak of so many other philosophies, even bhakti, if it is not based on the Vedas, creates problems, is what Rupa Goswami says. Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharatri Vidimvina, Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir, Utpata Eva Kalpate, he says. If the devotional service is not based on of Shruti, Smriti and Puranas, then it only causes Utpata. problem in the society, because we're concocting based on our own imperfect knowledge. So the right way to do, Prabhupada repeats again and again, is Mahajano ena gatastapanta, is to follow in the footsteps of great personalities, Mahajanas, so that we can be safe, that we're not using our tiny intelligence to actually know things. We are actually getting it from the Mahajanas and then saying it as it is. This is what Prabhupada would say, right? I may be imperfect, in his all his humility. He said, I may be imperfect, but the message I'm speaking is not imperfect, because I am not changing anything. I'm just passing the message as it is. When we start tampering with the message, then it becomes very, very problematic, which is what the Buddhists start doing. They reject the Vedas and they start trying to do this with their own intelligence. Any questions or comments on this? Yes. Huh? Yeah, let's do it. Let's finish the purport and probably we can ask questions. And that's the next point that the Buddhists speak of is nirvana, the principle of annihilation. Is the ultimate goal. We also want to annihilate, but we don't want to annihilate the soul, but we want to annihilate the body. Right? This is what Prabhupada is saying. The entire practice of devotional service should annihilate the material body so that we can get a spiritual body. That is real annihilation. If at all we want to annihilate the material body, we should attain a spiritual body. If we don't attain a spiritual body, there is no possibility of us attaining annihilating the material body. And we have seen many arguments before on why this annihilation is a problem, right? And Prabhupada says the only way in which we can annihilate the material body is janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvatah. When we actually know in truth Krishna's activities and pastimes and birth, then tyaktva deham punarjanma netima meti Arjuna. There is no rebirth again. We go to his abode. We have a eternal life with Krishna. So, continuing, we cannot accept the theory that the Buddhist philosophy is the only way, for there are so many defects in that philosophy. A perfect philosophy is one that has no defects, and that is Vedanta philosophy. We discussed this now. No one can point out any defects in the Vedanta philosophy, and therefore we can conclude that Vedanta is the supreme philosophical way of understanding the truth. According to the Buddhist cult, the Vedas are compiled by ordinary human beings. If this were the case, they would not be authoritative. From Vedic literatures, we understand that shortly after the creation, Lord Brahma was instructed in the Vedas. It is not that the Vedas were created by Brahma, although Brahma is the original person in the universe. If Brahma did not create the Vedas, but he is acknowledged as the first created being, wherefrom did Vedic knowledge come to Brahma? Obviously, the Vedas did not come from an ordinary person born in this material world. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. After creation, the Supreme Person imparted Vedic knowledge within the heart of Brahma. There was no person in the beginning of the creation other than Brahma. Yet, he did not compile the Vedas. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Vedas were not compiled by any created being. Vedic knowledge was given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead who created this material world. This is also accepted by Shankaracharya, although Shankaracharya is not a Vaishnava. We went through this discussion just now. And the last principle that the Buddhists have is, it is stated that mercy is one of the qualities of a Buddhist, but mercy is a relative thing. We show our mercy to a subordinate or to one who is suffering more than ourselves. However, if there is a superior person present, the superior person cannot be the object of our mercy. Rather, we are objects of the mercy of the superior person. Therefore, showing compassion and mercy is a relative activity. It is not the absolute truth. Apart from this, we also must know what actual mercy is. To give a sick man something forbidden for him to eat is not mercy. Rather, it is cruelty. Unless we know what mercy really is, we may create an undesirable situation. If we wish to show real mercy, we will preach Krishna consciousness in order to revive the lost consciousness of human beings, the living entity's original consciousness. Since the Buddhist philosophy does not admit the existence of the spirit soul, the so-called mercy of the Buddhist is defective. And the last point that Prabhupada is saying is that the Buddhists consider these good qualities like mercy and other things, and especially he's focusing on this quality of mercy here. Is one thing is that we can be merciful only to somebody who is below us. We cannot be merciful to superiors. For example, we cannot say, I'm waking up because I'm being merciful to the sun. All of us are dependent on the sun. We can give no mercy to the sun. The sun is in fact being merciful to us by by actually rising every day in the morning, right? And also, mercy is a very relative thing, because if we don't go by the principles of Vedic literature, we can actually harm the person in the name of mercy, right? The example Prabhupada is giving is for a sick person, say a diabetic person, you say you should not eat sweets, right? But then you feed them mangal sweets, like so much mangal sweets. It's actually going to kill them rather than help them, help a diabetic person. But the actual mercy, Prabhupada is saying, is helping somebody become Krishna conscious. This is actual mercy. Instead of relative mercy. There is actual mercy also. But the actual way to show mercy is to lead a person to the life of Krishna consciousness. In that way they can reawaken their original identity. So, but the Buddhist philosophy does not admit the existence of the spirit soul. So from that perspective, any kind of mercy that you have is going to be problematic, right? Because it's going to constantly put you in this cycle of birth and death again and again and again and again. If you don't show the main mercy and show other kinds of mercies, of course we have to be compassionate and merciful to other people and other living entities, but it should be primarily based on us connecting them to Krishna. If we give them everything but then don't give them Krishna, then it's useless. If we give them Krishna and then give them everything, then that is proper, that is perfect mercy, is what Prabhupada is saying. Which is why Buddhist philosophy is problematic, because they don't accept the existence of a soul. Then how can you help a soul being connected to the super soul? So the entire Krishna conscious aspect is gone. So you're giving food, but you're not giving them prasadam. That's the kind of thing, right? You're giving food, okay, if the food is bunjateta abgam papa, they're eating only sin if it's not offered to Krishna. Okay, it'll fill their belly, their hunger, but in the ultimate long run, it's not going to help them really. That's not real mercy. But the same thing we can help. This is why Prabhupada started Food for Life, right? The compassion is there for us, the mercy is there for us, but we do it the right way. And then it becomes really powerful, really potent. Okay, it's a long purport, lots of philosophy, it's packed. So we'll stop here. And yes.
So I have three things that I was thinking throughout your class. Srimad Bhagavatam, the first verse.
Yeah.
After what Tene Brahma, like how the knowledge was imparted to Brahma, in the translation, Prabhupada's right towards the end, I was thinking this is our philosophy, that only because of him, which is Krishna, do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him. So even like Prabhupada is making, the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam itself says how it is temporary,
yeah,
and it is been there because some say it's desires, and also and then if we go deep, then it's because of the three modes of nature. That was one thing I was thinking, that how we take the creation is.
Yeah, although it says it's unreal in the sense it's temporary. That's what Prabhupada will clarify in the purport. Which, if you just read unreal, then the Buddhists are also saying it's unreal, false, but it's temporary.
Yeah. And then when you're talking about the snake and rope, I was thinking Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam also speaks these two aspects of Maya. One is avaranatmika, which is the living entity being covered because of avidya, ignorance. So in that state also we take the rope to be a snake, and by knowledge only, like according to the Mayavadis or the whoever it is who thinks that one day we will get up, we will have knowledge and we will realize we are Brahman and all powerful. Right now we are like, we have memory deficiency. That's why we have forgotten, like Hanumanji, we have forgotten that we can jump. So we'll become Brahman one day, become the Supreme Personality of Godhead ourselves. So, but then Srimad Bhagavatam also says we are in avidya, but instead of realizing that we will become a Brahman one day, we will realize that we are the servant of Krishna. So that is the difference between the rope and snake. That their philosophy, ours, they say that we will become God one day, but we say we will realize that we are the servant of God one day when we have the vidya. And that's the rope. And Canto 3, that's what explained under Avaranatmika. And last one I was thinking of Madhya CC, this one, 6th chapter, 168. Prabhupada writes, this is translation between, this is a comparison between the Buddhists, Buddha philosophy and the Mayavad philosophy. So this is the translations, Madhya 6, 168. The Buddhists do not recognize the authority of the Vedas, Therefore, they are considered agnostics. However, those who have taken the shelter of the Vedic scriptures yet preach agnosticism in accordance with the Mayavad philosophy are certainly more dangerous than the Buddhists. So what Prabhupada was saying, I remember reading this section, reading here, that Buddhists, they at least reject the Vedas. So it's easy to reject Buddhists. But Mayavadis, they're very subtle, which I personally have felt in India, back in India. It's very subtle because they take the Vedas and they twist it according to their, and then it's like a police. It's a thief wearing a police dress. You think it's a police and you go and ask for help, but then it's actually a thief. So it's even more dangerous than Buddhism because Buddhism at least reject the Vedas, even if they're concocting. But if you're not into concoction of others' philosophy, like if you don't care what others think, then you would not go at all. But the Mayavad philosophy is more dangerous, Prabhupada is saying, because we are concocting the Veda itself.
Yes, completely misreading the Vedas. They don't take the direct meaning at all and use word jugglery. That's what Prabhupada uses. That's the only way you can basically try to prove this, confuse people through words. Or else it's very hard.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I thank you, Prabhu, for this class. So the reason why we are studying Buddhism or Nirvishesha or Shunyavad is so that we can strengthen our faith in our process.
Yes.
But also in this purport itself, there are so many philosophies.
Yeah.
Which are, so we're not focusing on all of, the Vaisheshika,
Yeah.
We have focused on these two.
Yes, just the Buddhist philosophy.
And Nirvish and Shunyavad.
Yeah.
And is that because these are the most two
Correct.
prevalent philosophies that we need to fight?
Correct.
And then the additional question to that is, it may be subtle, the Shunyavad and the Nirvish may be subtle in our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
But, we're not challenged so much with someone from the Buddhist faith coming and telling us what you're doing is wrong.
Yes.
Or Shunyavad faith coming and telling us what you're doing is wrong. But in our day-to-day activities, we are so absorbed with, and I know this could be a little, but let's say medical science. Day to day, we take shelter of medical science, the Western
Yes.
medical science. We work so that we can have health insurance, etc. And Western medical science doesn't accept the presence of a soul.
Correct.
But we take shelter of it and say, okay, sometimes to the point that we are totally overwhelmed by the what we need to do according to, and we cannot practice even our Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
So my just question is, should we at some point in time, because it's such a important aspect, it has become such an important aspect, try to defeat or just, no, these are the two philosophies, or even just the, the computer world, or, what we are dealing with is also very impersonalistic.
Correct.
And, but we're not so much trying to fight those philosophies or ways of life.
Yeah. So, that's what I was going to paraphrase to see if I got your question right. So you're saying that right now we are talking about these two major philosophies, but there are also other things in our current day-to-day life that don't accept the presence of a soul or a supreme person that we take shelter of. And should we start?
Yeah, we're not trying to fight that.
Correct.
We're very focused on.
Correct. So at least two things come to mind. One is these two philosophies are ways of our own life on how we will live our day-to-day life. So if you are a devotee and you take a medicine, you're not thinking this is my way of life. It is something that is aiding you or helping you out. Whereas if you're considering Buddhist philosophy, it's a little bit different, because if you take shelter of Buddhist philosophy, then the way you see the world completely changes, right? Because you think everything is false, and then you think you're I am or whatever. And the way you live will be completely different, and the goal that you want to achieve is completely different. That will completely derail us. Prabhupada says this is spiritual suicide, right? If we try to annihilate ourselves in terms of Mayavad philosophy or even Shunyavad. But if you take a medicine, knowing our Vedanta philosophy, that I am this body, I'm not this body, I'm the spiritual, but I have this body, but I have to sustain this body, and I have an ailment in this body, I have to take this medicine. I'm not taking shelter of the doctors and after taking the medicine, going and telling them that, now spiritual master, please tell me what I have to do. I've taken your medicine. Let me live the life by the way that you are telling me to live. That's not what we're doing, right? In many, many ways. And also, one of the very important principles of devotional service is called Yukta Vairagya. This is actually very important. Because for us, we don't reject anything. If we can use it in Krishna service, we will use everything in Krishna service. I'll tell you an example of Mayavad philosophy. Jiva Goswami writes Shat Sandarbha, right? His 6-part treatise of explaining devotional service. The entire thing that he's trying to do there is to say, Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest philosophy among all philosophies. Mahaprabhu's philosophy is Srimad Bhagavatam's philosophy. Therefore, Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest philosophy. This is basically what he's trying to do with the Shat Sandarbha. And when going through this systematically, he is speaking about Brahman also, because we accept Brahman is one of the aspects of God, right? What Jiva Goswami does is, I am not going to talk in detail about Brahman because Shankaracharya has already done it. So he uses Shankaracharya's argument to speak about Brahman. This is Yukta Vairagya. Although we're not fully agreeing with everything that Shankaracharya says, if there is something of value in what he is saying, we will take it. Shankaracharya wrote Bhaja Govindam, and Prabhupada quotes Bhaja Govindam so many times. We don't reject the person itself. If there is something valuable in what the person is saying that can be used in Krishna service, we will take it and use it. This is what Prabhupada would say, right? The microphone. The scientists are inventing the microphone. Why will I reject the microphone if I can use it in Krishna service? It doesn't mean I'm taking shelter of the person who's manufactured the microphone. Because our understanding is that everything is Krishna's energy, and if I can use this energy in Krishna's service, that's the best use of this this item, right? Microphone. Instead of singing a pop song or whatever, or a political speech, we are speaking about Krishna in this microphone. So that is not really taking shelter of that philosophy. But if we are going in the direction of taking shelter, we have to be careful. We need association, that's why, right? To pull us back and say, hey, you're going off of the V end. Especially for us, especially working in the IT industry or whatever, we now have artificial intelligence kicking in. Everywhere, this is the case. In a few years, there won't be a world where artificial intelligence won't be used. It's the reality of life. This is less like how internet was. None of us now stop using the internet, but we know how to use it. Right? This is basically what we have to learn.
Thank you for bringing it to Yukta Vairagya.
Yeah.
And also with Yukta Vairagya, we always have to understand that whatever we're using, as long as it doesn't take us away from our service of Krishna, it can be used.
Yeah.
But in the desire to ultimately use it, if it's taking us completely away, then it is not.
Exactly. This is the very definition that Rupa Goswami gives, right? Anashaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbhande Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya muchyate. He defines what yukta vairagya is. Anashaktasya vishayan. Ashakti means attachment. Anashakti means we don't have really attachment in this microphone. When we are using something in Krishna service, if we are attached to it, that is not yukta vairagya. I'm actually not interested in this, but I'm able to use it in Krishna service. That is yukta vairagya. Yatarham upyanjate nirbhande Krishna sambandhe. Although I'm not attached to this, I can use this in Krishna service. Which is how Prabhupada did everything, right? This famous, I think in London, the reporters were asking, Swamiji, you're a monk, you're a saintly person, and yet I think the devotees got him a Rolls-Royce car or something when he was coming in. Rolls-Royce car, right? But if we know in Prabhupada's life, he was in abject poverty. Actually, he was not attached to being taken in a Rolls-Royce car. So, but he used it in Krishna's service in the sense that he said, I am the representative of Krishna, and this is the honor that you give for Krishna. I'm taking it on behalf of Krishna. So in essence, Prabhupada was absolutely not attached to the Rolls Royce, but he was using it in Krishna service in many, many ways. Everything like that. He would answer it like that too. And in fact, he says, what is this? This is a tin can. Actually, you have to give me a golden car because that's what's fit for God. You're giving me an aluminum can. So that is Yukta Vairagya. We have to understand this definition, or else we can become very problematic, right? Oh, I am attached to doing this, but somehow I'll dovetail it in Krishna's. But initially that's okay, right? But then that's not what Yukta Vairagya is. Anashaktasya Vishayan. On material things, I don't have any attachment. That is Yukta Vairagya. But I will use it in Krishna service. That way it won't affect me. If we are attached to it and we are trying to associate with it more and more for our own self, then it becomes very problematic. Somehow we have to use it in Krishna service. Yes, Mataji. Okay, we are running out of time, lot of time. Huh? Yeah, the breakfast has been, I'm sure, is being served. So if you want to please have breakfast, I won't feel bad.
Actually, I appreciate Mataji's question because it's relevant with so many aspects of life where we associate, which is not Krishna conscious. And I think whatever I was going to say, Mataji rephrased the second time. So just my simple way of understanding, correct me if it's correct, is we associate with any material energy, either health, science, or whatever is it, provided helps us to maintain this material body until we reach a state where we are not affected by threefold miseries. And we can associate with it only until the state it doesn't affect our consciousness of attraction towards Krishna. So once it start affecting, probably we should detach. Is that the right way to understand, bro?